joining us today for a technical briefing and an update on trial running on the Stage 2 South Extension, Lines 2 and 4. I'm very happy to be here today as we have exciting news to share. First and foremost, I would like to say that trial running is to test Transit Next. This is Transit Next final exam. Over the past few months, we have reached several significant milestones, making great strides towards getting ready to open Lines 2 and 4. In July, we held a technical briefing to discuss the South Extension's trial running program, covering prerequisites, scoring, and the pathway to passenger service. In August, we provided further updates at the Lightwell Subcommittee, and I'm happy to report that since then, we have been steadily working to enhance system reliability through continuing the daily operation of trains on Line 2 and 4. We have completed practice runs, finalized station construction, and continued training our rail operations staff. Through these pre-trial running activities, we have built up the system's reliability, and I'm confident we are ready to begin the trial running phase. Before we get into details, I want to remind you of the purpose of trial running. The goal is to demonstrate that the O-Train Lines 2 and 4, including all of the vehicles, infrastructure, and system components, are ready to consistently and safely support service to the public. This includes testing of the system as a whole, including rail operations and maintenance procedures. As I have stated many times, the 104 recommendations from the Public Inquiry Report and lessons learned from Stage 1 LRT have been incorporated into trial running. We have worked to ensure that every single best practice from these reports is put in place. The trial running period will have 2 phases, which will take place over a minimum of 21 days. It is important to note that the standards for testing are very high, and it may be necessary for trial running to extend beyond the 21-day time frame. In the first phase, we will simulate normal passenger service on the O-Train South Extension. During this time, the system must achieve a minimum on-time performance of 98.5% over a rolling 40-day average. Richard would further explain what this means in a few moments. We will extend this phase until the system has met this high performance threshold. Once we achieve that goal, we will enter the second phase, daily operational and maintenance scenario evaluations, lasting 7 days. Over this 1-week period, our operations and maintenance teams will navigate various scenarios typical in regular service, including door issues, stop trains, single platform only service, train swaps, and more. Even with all the preparation, we know that there will be challenges that we need to be prepared for. Je vais le dire en français aussi parce que c'est très important.
In the other language, because you have to understand, even with all the preparation, we know that there will be challenges, but we're prepared for that.
South Line has a very different design than Line 1. For example, with sections of single track in some areas, switches become very important for ensuring the safe and timely operation of the system. At the same time, because we're using diesel-powered trains, there are no overhead wires to worry about during winter storms. We have developed comprehensive plans to manage these sorts of issues effectively and are testing those methods in on-site scenarios. We can now confirm that trial running will begin on October 7th. Based on this timeline, we anticipate that the earliest possible opening of the system to the public will be mid-November. This is an estimate, and as we progress through trial running, we will gain a better idea of when the system will be ready to go into passenger service. I want to be abundantly clear. We will not open the system until we are absolutely confident of its readiness and safety, which will be based on clear and objective standards and in consultation with independent third-party experts. We are making excellent progress and are ready for trial running. I would like to thank the entire team in rail construction program, Transit Next, Transit Service Delivery, and rail operations, and everyone at OC Transport for their hard work and collaboration that has brought us to this major milestone. Once we commence trial running next week, we will closely monitor the system's performance, gather data, and make necessary adjustments. We will also provide daily updates Monday to Friday to ensure that Council, the public, and media are kept fully informed of the testing results. Throughout this process, our priority is to ensure that the system is safe and reliable for our community. Transit Next has spent the last several years preparing for this test. This is Transit Next final exam, and it will be a rigorous one. Transit Next and OC Transport have studied hard, have practiced multiple times, and we are united in our confidence in the reliability of the system. But the proof will be in the daily testing results. Those results alone, which everyone will be able to see, will determine the success of trial running. When we are done on return to Council with our final report, everyone will have come on this journey with us and will see what we see. Now, we will begin today's presentation. Next slide, please. We have dedicated several years to preparing for this important phase. I'm shaking today for a good reason. In 2022, we took our first steps by testing our vehicles on a small section of track. This initial testing was crucial for learning about the Stadler Flirt vehicles and making adjustments where necessary. As we gained insights, we expanded our testing area and introduced on-the-job training for our diesel rail operators. This hands-on experience has been invaluable in ensuring that our team is well prepared for the challenges ahead. For the past several months, we have been running trains in a way that is similar to what is expected for trial running to ensure we are ready. 9 trains are the maximum that will be running on the line, and 9 trains have been running. This preparation has significantly increased the reliability of our system. Next slide, please. As we have shared for the past several months, we have been preparing for trial running. We have now completed all the prerequisites for trial running. By doing this, we are now ready to begin trial running on October 7th. Once we successfully complete trial running, a thorough report will be shared with Council. From there, we will work on achieving substantial completion and the necessary regulatory approvals, which Richard will share more details on. We will start with Richard Older, the city's director of the rail construction program, who will dive into the specifics and outline our next steps toward launching lines 2 and 4. Following Richard, Trial charter will provide information on final readiness activities that will occur after trial running in order for OC Transpo to be ready to open lines 2 and 4 to the public. Finally, Amanda Thompson will provide information on communications through trial running and the customer readiness campaign in anticipation of the opening. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr.
Okay, thank you, Renee. Good morning, everyone. I am very happy to be here to talk about the much anticipated trial running that will start next week. And I'm happy to run through all the details to provide full transparency of the process. In the next few slides, I will provide an overview of the trial running and walk through the different elements involved in trial running. On your screen now, we can see the 9 different trial running prerequisites. We have shown this list before, and now we're happy to confirm that every item has been completed. Next slide, please. In a previous update, I talked about the fact that there continues to be a decrease in the number and scope of issues that are being reported from the line. The issues that do occur are also having less impact on service delivery. And this is what we expect to see as we continue to exercise the system. As you can see from the graph on the slide, over the last 14 days, the daily on-time performance of Transit Next has stabilized at consistently high levels. The average on-time performance for the last 10 days has been 99.12%. Next slide, please. In the next few slides, I'm going to talk about what trial running looks like and the performance metrics we are tracking closely. The fundamental objective of trial running is to exercise the complete integrated system infrastructure, including all subsystems, operating personnel, and operating procedures. This will allow us to confirm the readiness for revenue service. Trial running is made up of 2 phases, with the process lasting a minimum of 21 days. The first phase, which is the simulated passenger service, will last a minimum of 14 days. During this phase, Transit Next must maintain a minimum on-time performance of 98.5% over a 14-day rolling average. The second phase is the operational and maintenance scenario evaluations, where different scenarios that may arise during regular service are evaluated. This phase will last 7 days. Next slide, please. Now I will provide an overview of how trial running will work, and in the next few slides, I will speak about the performance metrics. On-time performance is measured by assessing on-time departures at terminus stations for both lines 2 and 4 while respecting dwell times. If a departure occurs beyond 30 seconds from the scheduled time, it is considered to be a late departure. To be clear, when we talk about line 2, we are talking about the on-time departures between Bayview and Limebank stations. And when we talk about line 4, it means on-time departures from South Keys stations and the airport station. Service reliability is a measure of on-time departures divided by the number of planned departures. Like all systems, we expect some small difference in on-time departures from day to day. And that is where the rolling average calculation comes in. The rolling average accounts for daily variations. For trial running, a minimum of 98.5% rolling average over 14 consecutive days is needed. If this is not the case, this phase of trial running will be extended. Next slide, please. So similar to performance during normal service, and in accordance with the project agreement, the contractor will not be evaluated on any non-project caused events that may otherwise impact on-time performances. Non-project causes are issues that arise that are not within TransitNext's control. Examples of this would be delays or issues caused by the city. These may include issues with the head-end equipment or operational issues like operator availability. Another example are delays that would be caused by third parties, potentially adjacent construction activities. And another example would be the CN movements that occur at the Walkley Diamond near Walkley Yard, that occur during the week and will cause passenger trains to be held for a short period of time. The on-time performance calculations during trial running are adjusted for any non-project causes. Next slide, please. Now that I have talked about what the daily performance metric is, I will now speak to the daily sequence of events that happen to get to the final scorecard. Every day, the city and TransitNext bring forward information from the Transit Operations Control Center, the Maintenance Management System, and other sources for evaluation. All late and missed departures from terminus stations are reviewed in a daily meeting. This meeting, the Testing and Commissioning Team Trial Running Meeting, has representatives from TransitNext, the maintainer, RCP, OC Transpo, the independent certifier, and the system integration verifier. All participants evaluate the data from the previous day of operations, review the late or missed departures, and attribute to either Projectco, which are TransitNext's responsibility, and non-Projectco causes, which are not TransitNext's responsibility. These non-Projectco causes are then removed from performance calculations. These metrics are then used to produce the daily on-time performance calculation for the preceding day. This whole process is overseen and validated by the independent certifier. Next slide, please. In the next couple of slides, I will walk through an example calculation for the daily on-time performance. So the testing and commissioning team determines the number of on-time departures that are attributed to Projectco. This number is then divided by the planned number of departures. In the example on the screen, we have 330 on-time departures attributed to TransitNext, and the total planned for that day is 338 departures. So we divide 330 by 338, and we get to our daily performance, which is 97.63%. Next slide, please. To calculate the 14-day rolling average, we add up all the daily performance of each of the days, and then divide it by the number of days since the trial running has started. So for this example, we're looking at the first 2 days. TransitNext performance was 100% and 99.41%. We add these two together and divide by 2, and that gives us an average of 99.7. In terms of the full trial running period, it's important to note that the 14 days will be the last 14 days for the purpose of the calculation. Next slide, please. In the scorecard that we'll be using to report back, we will identify issues that have occurred on the system that may impact the daily performance. Train systems are complex, and issues can arise as the system is exercised. The daily scorecard will include a high-level category of the types of issues that are impacting TransitNext's daily performance. On the daily performance report that Council will receive, there are 5 categories of issues the daily performance could list. They include signaling issues. This includes issues with equipment used to detect train location, such as coupling coils, issues with the automatic train supervision system, or issues with the routing of trains resulting in timetable issues. We have track issues. These include issues with the rail and track infrastructure, for example, issues with the switches or rail profile. communication system issues. This includes issues preventing remote activation or reception of information from field equipment, such as the portal guideway intrusion detection system at the Dow's Lake Tunnel, switches, or other systems remotely accessed by the Transit Operations Control Center, such as the supervisory control and data acquisition, closed circuit television, and automatic train system. Vehicle issues. This includes a range of error codes, compressor issues, traction issues, CCTV cameras on the trains having issues, and the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system. And finally, there are operational issues. This includes issues where emergency brake applications have occurred, possibly because of an overspeed, diesel rail operator availability, and excess dwell times at stations. Next slide, please. So to bring that discussion together, we have a picture here at the bottom of the screen of what the actual daily performance report will look like. This daily memo will be provided to Council Monday through Friday to provide full transparency on TransitNext progress and performance during each day of trial running. As my colleague Amanda will talk about, this performance report will also be shared with the public. The key information that Council will receive in this daily performance memo includes the daily TransitNext performance, issues identified, the current 14-day rolling average, and the minimum number of days left to achieve that 98.5% rolling average. Next slide, please. So the timelines on your screens now show what trial running for 21 days could look like should there be no major issues. As Renée has mentioned, trial running will start on October the 7th with the simulated passenger service segment. Here is where TransitNext must achieve 98.5% 14-day rolling average to move to the next phase of trial running. If at any point the daily performance drops to 78% or less, additional days will be required. Should the 98.5% 14-day rolling average be achieved, the first phase would conclude at the earliest on October the 21st, and then the next 7 days would be the daily operational maintenance scenario evaluations that my colleague Troy will cover shortly. This potentially could wrap up as early as October the 29th, concluding the trial running phase. Next slide, please. So on the screen now is an example of the daily performance report for the first 14 days of trial running. As shown on the screen, one of the scenarios that could happen is that the TransitNext performance drops on the last day, and this impacts the 14-day rolling average. In this example, this would require an additional 14 days to recover to meet the 98.5% required standard. We will not be rushing trial running, and we will continue until the 98.5% 14-day rolling average as required is achieved. Next slide, please. There are several independent third parties that we've engaged throughout this process. Ricardo Rail is our system integration verifier. They provide verification of interfaces and integration issues between project teams, which include the city teams that are responsible for key systems such as the head end. There is AECOM, who will be overseeing overnight maintenance, and they'll be submitting reports for verification of maintenance activities. We have SENA, who are our safety auditors, and they provide validation of compliance with safety requirements for the project. And importantly, we have AW Hooker, which is the independent certifier, and they validate trial running results acceptance. They have a key role in verifying requirements for substantial completion and final completion. And they also provide certification of payments. Next slide, please. Before I hand it over to my colleague, Troy Charter, I went through a lot of material in the last few slides. So just to emphasize, the key points are trial running will start on October the 7th. It will be a minimum of 21 days and consist of 2 phases. The first phase will last a minimum of 14 days, and Transit Next will need to achieve a 14-day rolling average of 98.5% before moving on to the second phase, which I will now hand over to Troy to cover.
Thank you, merci Richard. Depuis plusieurs mois, aussi Transport et T-Next font circuler les trains selon le service régulier et simulent plusieurs...
We will be actually going through the trial running and before we can actually open to public.
Where T-Next must demonstrate the achievement of the performance expectations of normal operations, as my colleague Mr. Holder discussed. Over the final 7 days of the trial running period, we'll be running various scenarios designed to test and verify the operating procedures, the practices, and the technical elements, all those types of things when we wouldn't be necessarily running on a normal schedule. We've been running, the 14 days. It's going to be that normal schedule we'll be operating. We've been doing that extensively over the past several months. And then that 7 days, some of that will be normal schedule, but we'll also be looking at really sort of trying to test and exercise the system, our staff, and how we respond. Some of the scenarios that we'll be operating include removing trains from service due to things like spills or biohazards, servicing customers using only one platform or one track, operating around an obstruction, and running alternate service patterns where a train is unable to access a portion of the line. We're doing all this so that we've assessed and ensured that we're prepared should disruptions occur when in service. For us, it's about it's about practice, and you're going to hear me say that again. We want to practice these things. We want to assess, and it's about validating T-Next and their systems, but it's about evaluating our staff and making sure they've understood our standard operating procedures, our training, and our programs, and we respond accordingly. Some of the scenarios have already been put into operation. We've already tested. However, this is the final test, as Renée Amilcar mentioned, and we are looking to assess and validate numerous scenarios as part of the trial running process. At this point, I'll just hand it back to Richard for a couple slides, and then I'll be back.
Thank you, Troy. So now that we have covered the process for trial running, I'll speak a little bit about what comes after trial running has concluded and what we need to do before we start revenue service. Next slide, please. There are a few key steps before we open lines 2 and 4. After trial running concludes, we then proceed to substantial completion. And then concurrently, we start working on the regulatory approvals required from various agencies, including Transport Canada. After substantial completion occurs and we have regulatory approvals in place, we go into the final readiness phase, which we expect will take a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks. As Renée mentioned at this point, we would come back with a report to Council at a formal meeting to present a possible opening date and summarize the results of trial running. After all these steps are completed, we would be in a position to open lines 2 and 4. Next slide, please. So in terms of providing a little bit more detail, I'll talk about the final certifications and approvals. When it comes to certifications, we require a certification of substantial completion by the independent certifier, including confirmation of the minor deficiency list and verification of handover for new municipal infrastructure. We also require completion and submission by Transit Next of the final engineering and safety assurance case, otherwise known as the safety case. Lastly, the final review of the Transit Next safety case by the city's independent safety auditor, Senna, would complete the certification requirements. For the regulatory approvals, we require the issuance of a certificate of fitness by the Canadian Transportation Agency and confirmation of a notice of change in operations to Transport Canada. Lastly, this would be followed by the issuance of a railway operating certification by Transport Canada. Before I hand over to Troy, I want to thank my team at the Rail Construction Program and all the colleagues working within OC Transpo who have put in long hours to ensure that we get to this milestone. And their dedication to our city and professional is something that I am very proud of. Thank you, and I will now hand over to Troy.
Thank you again, Richard. So once the construction contractor has reached substantial completion and the necessary regular approvals are secured, some of the high-level information that support the startup of operations includes the fact that the overall system will have been rigorously tested with extensive operation of 9 trains, from January of this year all the way through to trial running in October. The system will have been operating and maintained at the expected service levels for an extended period of time. And most importantly, and I can't emphasize this enough, no new or emerging safety or reliability issues have been identified during the trial running period that would prevent a safe, reliable, and successful launch of the system. It is at this point that the city would then be in a position to announce an opening date. Next slide, please. We get into the final readiness. For a minimum of 3 weeks after trial running, OC Transpo and TNEX maintenance teams will carry on with final preparations and readiness activities for the system launch. The goal of this period is to maintain operations as if we were actively in service, fostering experience and confidence amongst the teams. We want to strengthen our ability to respond to various real-life incidents and ensure that our actions promote a safe and reliable service. In short, it can be summed up in 3 words, and I've already said it once, but I'll say it 3 more times: practice, practice, practice. During this period, we will simulate service by conducting daily launches, ensuring that our maintenance team prepares vehicles for launch each day. We'll verify that the inspections and necessary corrective actions are completed according to the maintenance standards, and we'll maintain that reliable and consistent schedule. Additionally, we aim to practice and reinforce common scenarios that staff will need to handle once service begins. Although our teams have been training and reviewing standard operating procedures for the past several months, repetition is essential. We will carry out a series of drills and exercises designed to reinforce our team's knowledge. These activities include responses, again, to common situations, troubleshooting train doors, managing short delays, handling passenger inquiries via the onboard intercom system, addressing medical emergencies, and those are just a few of the scenarios and situations that we're going to be practicing and drilling with our staff. Next slide, please. Safety of our customers is always our #1 priority and drives all our decisions. As mentioned at previous briefings, we have conducted hundreds of drills, tabletop exercises, standard operating procedure reviews, as well as we've conducted so far 3 full-scale exercises, including one of which was the emergency incident or customer evacuation, a drill that was conducted just outside the station at the Ottawa Airport. As part of our readiness activities, we have planned for 2 additional multi-stakeholder drills involving our emergency response partners, including Ottawa Fire, police, paramedics, and additional stakeholders such as the Airport Authority and Carleton University. These 2 additional exercises will provide opportunities to continue to test and further validate OC Transpo's emergency response procedures. It is important that we seize as many opportunities as possible to practice emergency response situations in a live environment, to work with our emergency response providers, and to familiarize those with as much firsthand knowledge of the system, the protocols, and the infrastructure that exists. The reality is that when we're in operations, those opportunities are limited. So right now, it's an important step to seize that opportunity to do these things now. The first exercise will simulate a situation where emergency responders will need to cross the rail line to respond to an emergency at the Ottawa Airport. And then the second exercise will be an emergency involving a train human contact situation in the Dow's Lake Tunnel. So those are 2 exercises that are planned in those final 3 weeks. Next slide, please. À l'approche de l'ouverture des lignes 2 et 4, nous
As we
procéderons
approach the opening of line 2 and 4, we'll be undertaking wider scale tests.
mimic service with customers for the first time. We want to secure participants who are unfamiliar with the system, who do not know all the inner workings, to replicate how customers will use and interact with the trains, the signage, and the station infrastructure. This will help us to understand how new users will access the stations, how they'll use the trains, where they'll be looking for information, and gives us the first real opportunity for our operators to get the feel and look of entering and exiting stations with customers on the platforms. During the dress rehearsal, we'll also have a number of unplanned scenarios that we refer to as injects, where we'll assess our team's response and knowledge to our various SOPs, or standard operating procedures. Now that the trial running has been announced, we'll be sending out communication to city staff seeking their interest in participating in this important and exciting milestone. Lastly, and as part of this 3-week period, we will be conducting station familiarizations tours for our front-facing staff to provide them with an opportunity to get to know the system as well. With new systems and the expanded rail service, we know it will take some time for customers to become familiar with lines 2 and 4. These tours will help our staff be ready to support customers during their trips from day one. Plusieurs activités sont prévues au cours de cette période de 3
Several activities are planned for this 3-week period. They're important to guarantee that we're ready to welcome our passengers from the first day.
Provide some insight into our communications. Thank you.
Merci, Troy, et bonne journée. As we head into trial running, our goal is to be clear and transparent while ensuring the public is informed on the day-to-day status. As we've heard today, trial running is important, but also a very complicated process. So in the next few slides, I'll provide an update on our communications plan during trial running and on the customer readiness marketing campaign that will also ramp up during this time period in order to help customers prepare for the operation of the new lines. Next slide, please. So one of the lessons learned from Stage 1 LRT was the need for increased transparency and information sharing during trial running. This phase is important to building the overall confidence that the system is ready to function as designed. So we've developed a robust communications plan for this phase that will share as much information as possible with the council, with our city council, with media, and with the public. As part of this plan, as we've already heard today, we held a technical briefing in July. We've provided detailed updates at the LRT subcommittee. And today we're providing further specifics to ensure that there's clarity on reporting and the information resources that will be available during trial running. Shortly after this presentation, a memo will be distributed to council and to media, and it will reiterate important details from this briefing. With that memo, we will also be sharing a package of information with council that includes resources like an FAQ, or frequently asked questions document, to help answer questions that councillors may receive from residents. We will also establish a dedicated trial running section on octranspo.com, which is really a central location for all information on the current status, explanations of the performance metrics, the process, and several other resources. Today's presentation and the memo I just referenced will be available on that website. And we really intend for the website to keep the public informed in a clear and a transparent manner throughout this process. So as Richard has outlined, the daily memo that provides the details on the daily performance will be distributed to the council and to media on Monday to Friday in order to keep those stakeholders informed. And those daily memos will also be available on our trial running website. And we will be promoting the link to this webpage on all of our OC Transpo social media accounts throughout the trial running process, so they'll be easy to find. In addition, our team will be available for daily media availabilities during the first phase of trial running in order to discuss the latest performance report and any other questions that reporters may have during this time. And then once we reach the end of trial running, as has been indicated today, our team will be providing a detailed report and presentation of the results at a formal meeting, and an update, and all of that updated information will also be available online. Next slide, please. So I've just talked about how we will track and report on trial running. And what I'd like to focus on now for the next couple of slides is the communications that will be underway in order to ensure that customers are aware and ready to use the new lines when they open. So as we've shared previously at committee meetings, we do have a robust and flexible customer information campaign to ensure everyone is well informed and can plan their trip ahead of time. To date, we have been keeping customers informed with regular messages across many channels and pointing them to our O-Train extension website, which is regularly updated with the latest information. This customer readiness and information campaign will become much more visible in our community over the next few weeks as it picks up in this pre-launch phase. We will continue to build awareness of the new lines among residents, to inform customers about the upcoming start of the service, and to point people to our O-Train extension website for more information. Lines 2 and 4 will bring benefits to our community with new trains, new stations, and new connections across our city. At the same time, this new service means change for transit customers, and our communications are designed to support them through changes to their journey. Service information will be shared on many channels, including social media and our website, and in city-owned and digital advertising spaces across Ottawa. We were also working with major partners like Carleton University and the airport to share our messages with these important stakeholders. As trial running comes to an end, we will then begin a full paid advertising campaign. This is planned to run until approximately 6 weeks after lines 2 and 4 open. So during this time, our goal will be to ensure our customers are prepared for the transition to lines 2 and 4, educated about the important new features of the trains, and to encourage new riders to try the system. Customers will be able to find lots of information on our dedicated website, as well as the travel planner will be updated, which will then allow customers to plan future trips using lines 2 and 4. This paid advertising campaign will include advertising on many digital and print channels. There will also be radio ads, ads on streaming audio, social media, screens, and billboards across the city. During this phase, our communications will highlight the opening date and cover everything customers need to know about riding the new lines, navigating stations, making connections, traveling safely, and will emphasize any changes to transit service during the transition stage to opening. Included at this time, we will also be sending a mail out to approximately 120,000 households that are close to the new lines 2 and 4 and park and ride lots along the line in order to encourage them to give the new facilities a try. Our outreach staff will be present at transit stations when the system opens to both welcome and to support customers as they begin to use the system. Throughout each phase of our campaign, we are watching closely for questions from customers and from stakeholders. Our campaign is both data-driven and flexible, so that as staff are monitoring and receive feedback, adjustments can be made to ensure customers or residents are being reached effectively. Next slide, please. So finally, to summarize, here we've laid out our major milestones and communications from the beginning of trial running until the first day of service on lines 2 and 4. So first off, our trial running webpage will be live after this technical briefing in order to keep visitors updated on progress. Our pre-launch marketing will then begin on many different channels. And once trial running concludes and a launch date is confirmed, our full information campaign will be released, including paid advertising to highlight the opening date and key features of the new system. This phase will also include the direct mail brochure to residents along the line. At this time, we will also have the online travel planner and transit app updated in order to allow customers to plan their future trip. So these are important tools, and they will be highlighted in our campaign, including in the household mailout and in other prominent alerts that will be on digital channels. OC Transpo's team will be mobilized to support customers, stakeholders, and elected officials with the opening of lines 2 and 4, including to provide in-person customer outreach at stations. And we will continue to provide updates on how our communications plans are progressing as we move through trial running and approach the opening of the lines. Thank you, merci. I'll turn the presentation back to Renée.
Merci beaucoup, Amanda. As we look ahead, I want to emphasize that there is a clear and structured process in place to evaluate the results of our trial running. This process is informed by lessons learned from line 1 and recommendations from the public inquiry, ensuring that we approach this with the highest possible standards. Throughout this phase, we will share daily results with both council and the public, maintaining transparency as usual and open communication. Additionally, we have engaged third-party experts to review the results, providing unbiased judgment. At the conclusion of the trial running, we will present a detailed report and presentation to council, summarizing our outcomes. Following this, we will be able to announce an opening date, marking a significant milestone in our journey. I'm pleased to share that we are collaborating closely with TransitNext, whose skill and support are essential as we navigate throughout trial running. Now I'd like to open the floor for any questions you may have. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you for taking our questions today. So my first question is, what key technical adjustments or improvements have been made during the final stages leading up to trial running for lines 2 and 4? And how do these ensure the systems are fully prepared for public operation?
Okay, thank you for the question. I think what we have been able to do over the last few weeks is to optimize the timetable that is being run by the vehicles. And so, as Madame Amilcar has discussed, this is there are many sections of single tracking. So what's very important for the timetable to achieve those 12-minute headways is that the vehicles traveling in opposite directions, north and south, meet at the appropriate time at the appropriate place. And so a few seconds delay can cause interruptions to the service across the whole line. So what we have been able to do over the last few weeks is go through various iterations of a timetable just to improve, just to tweak each of those meets, adjusting the times at each of the stations, making changes to the times that the vehicles wait at the terminus stations. And we feel like, we have definitely seen the improvement to the overall service during the day. And it doesn't stop here. So we now feel like we have a good, stable timetable to run throughout trial running. But I think it is likely once we get through the trial running period, and Troy and the operations team kind of have that system to then further optimize, we will probably make more tweaks based on the learnings to date and optimize that timetable even more.
So my follow-up kind of goes from what you just finished off by saying. So once the lines are operational, will there be additional monitoring or trial phases to address unforeseen issues, such as and how will feedback from initial passengers be integrated into ongoing improvements?
Yeah. Want to start?
Thank you for the question. The answer is yes. The timetable is a good example because the example that I can give is at Carleton. We know that we have a lot of students, right? So we need to provide extra time to embark and disembark, but we don't want to be late. So we have what we call the dual time. So we will play with that to make sure that we have sufficient time to disembark and embark people, and we're still on time. So those kind of tweak, we will need to continue to work on them.
Thank you.
Maybe if I can just add too as well, some of the other things that we'd be looking at, and we try to identify these things through one of the reasons for the dress rehearsals, to identify things. And I talked about, new customers onto the line. We want to see where they're looking. We want to see where they're going. So, that gives us an opportunity to look at where our signage is placed, and if we need to make some adjustments to that or make it stand out more, those types of things. So, there's lots of opportunities for us to collect feedback and make some minor tweaks and adjustments. The schedule being the biggest one, but another one, a good example is signage. And if you see people are finding difficulties finding something, then maybe we need to look at how can we enhance that. So that's another example.